Their defense is a joke.
What it really comes down to is I would love to have either of them.
They don't have a prayer in their secondary. They have nothing.
So you're saying just don't draft Blunt?
I'm saying don't draft Blunt.
He was unbelievably efficient last year.
You know that they use their running backs in the passing game a ton.
I'm drafting him tonight.
That's Team Huevos. Huevos gigantes.
Hey everyone, welcome into the FantasyPros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Sylvester, joined as always by Kyle Yates and Mike Tagliere. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. We're at Bobby Fantasy Pro, at Mike Tagliere NFL, and at Kyle Y NFL. Kyle, what's up, buddy?
Oh man, not a whole lot. I think I finally have recovered from our 4.5 hour live stream on Thursday night from the draft. So finally caught up on some sleep, but no, I'm ready to talk about the draft and the fallout and all of it.
Yep, we're going to do a draft recap show today. Later in the week, we're going to do a mock draft for Dynasty rookie picks. We're going to pick 24 players, talk about each of them. So we've got that coming as well, if you have that question. Tags, now what's up, dude? You got number one out of all three of us in mock draft accuracy rankings. Congrats.
Well, I appreciate that, man. It's always stiff competition, especially with you guys. And then we had like a 212 analysts in the mock draft competition this year, so it was quite a few. I'm happy with the way things turned out, obviously, but it was an interesting live stream. If you guys were able to tune in, thank you so much for the support. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think Yates, it was 78,000 people. That was after the first night. I don't know if it added after that. I didn't go back and check on it, but it was a wild success, and my throat was killing me at the end of that.
Oh my word, I'm telling you.
The draft was an absolute blast. We've got some weird landing spots, though. We'll talk about those in a little bit. But here's the plan for today, okay? We're going to go one division at a time. We're going to try to touch on all 32 teams here. Let's start off in the AFC East. And I want to start with the Patriots because they got Kyle Duggar in the top 50 picks, which means both of you suckers owe me Portillo's. Let's go.
If there was one team to take Kyle Duggar in the top 50, New England would be that team, and I should have seen it coming.
Because they're geniuses. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Me and Bill Belichick, same person. Their draft was not very good, though, was it, guys?
Hated it.
Their
really
drafts
did.
never are good, though.
That's true. I mean, they get the most of their players, what they do. So that's why the Patriots are a little bit different is they draft a player on their strengths, and they understand what that player does well, what they don't do well. And it doesn't mean they're a complete player. It just means they're going to fit a piece of the puzzle that they want them to. Right. Duggar is a high upside pick. We know this team's in rebuild mode. I didn't necessarily I wasn't jumping.
You think so? I think they win I still think they win the East this year.
No,
I don't. They lost.
You guys want to bet on that too? You want to owe me more Portillos?
I'm not going to bet against. I'm not going to bet on the Dolphins or the Jets, but
the Bills.
No, Duggar was fine, but Josh Uche, I did like that pick in the second round. But then after that, everything was just. I feel like they had one of the worst drafts in the NFL. To be honest with you,
Me too.
I had them bottom 5 draft this year, but the truth be told, I'm never a huge fan of the Patriots draft. I'm really not.
And they drafted a kicker in the 5th round as well. Yates, what do you think about their tight ends? Those are the guys who are fantasy relevant here.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't watch Devin Singletary or Dalton Keene coming into the draft because those were guys that were so far down consensus draft boards that I was just like, I don't need
round 4, round 5, round 6.
I mean, Singletary picked up towards the end of the draft cycle where it was kind of like, okay, well, maybe this guy could be like a late, day 3 pick, so maybe I should watch him, but I just never got around to it. So then he goes in the 3rd round, and they take 2 tight ends in the 3rd round, Dalton Keene as well. So it's like, are they much of an upgrade over Matt Lacoste and Ryan Izzo? I don't know, but I
think long term they are because they're both athletic upside guys. Yeah. But if you're drafting them in redraft leagues. Oh no! I don't have either in my top 25 rankings.
No, well, I said this the other day on Twitter. I was like, I looking at the New England Patriots offense. I don't know if I'm gonna have any skill position players from the Patriots. I just may be all hands off on that offense. It's just not going to be a high-powered offense. James White could have PPR value, but based on where people are going to be drafting him, I don't know if I'm going to be personally having him.
I have no idea what they're going to do. Maybe they go out and get Antonio Brown, Dez Bryant, Percy Harvin. That would be fun.
Yeah, I say we move on to the team that had the best draft in this division. I mean, actually, the Jets and the Dolphins.
The Jets by far over the Dolphins. I think. I mean, the Dolphins were a top 6 or 7 draft, but the Jets had an awesome draft.
I think they both did. I actually have them both as top 6 drafts. Okay. I was a big fan of both of them. Now, Mekhi Becton over Tristan Wirfs. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
That one was the only questionable thing. But trading back and getting Denzel Mims, getting Ashton Davis, There was a lot of reasons.
Zuninga in the third as well.
Right, and Bryce Hall in the fifth. That was like the steal of the draft because
Right.
Bryce Hall is a cornerback from Virginia that legitimately has, we've talked about him on the show before, is that he's got first round upside, but he's been dealing with injuries. If he comes back and he's healthy, this is going to be one of those picks where people look back and say, it was well worth the risk. Like the risk was worth the reward, I think, once you got past the third round.
I agree. I absolutely agree about Bryce Hall. He was one of my favorites. I love the Denzel Mims pick. Yates, how does this work out? Like, in redraft, is he the number one rookie wide receiver this year because of his landing spot? He's got no competition for targets.
That's the thing. I was going through and doing projections for the Jets, and I mean, I gave him over 100 targets because I was like, I don't see Quincy Enunwa getting them. I don't see Brashad Perryman getting, more than 80 targets. Jamison Crowder, I think, is going to lead that wide receiver core in targets, just from the offense, what Adam Gase prefers, and the way that they pepper the slot receiver with targets there. So I think Denzel Mims, though, is going to be used downfield more than we think. So you're going to be talking about a lower percentage of actual receptions based on his targets. So that's a concern. But otherwise, I mean, you're talking about a beautiful landing spot. I don't know if I would put him as the number one, but he's a beautiful landing spot for sure.
Certainly not in Dynasty. I've got Justin Jefferson number one in Dynasty. Now, last year, I liked Terry McLaurin as well. We'll talk about that on Thursday's show, or maybe when we get to the Minnesota Vikings. But, last year I loved Terry McLaurin as a rookie wide receiver who can step right in because there was no competition for targets and he was polished. Mm-hmm. Mims is the same kind of player in my mind, comes into a similar situation, so I like him a lot. Probably going to have some shares. Now, LaMichael Pirine, he's going to be the backup running back to Le'Veon Bell, who they don't like in New York. If Bell gets injured, if Bell, whatever happens with him, if they trade him, whatever, this is a really interesting piece to keep an eye on. What do you think, Tags?
I don't roster guys like that just because I don't see this as being a high scoring offense just overnight.
Sure.
Now, granted, they have built up the offensive line through free agency and the draft, and that's always a good thing, but it's going to take some time for those guys to mold together as one unit. I'm going to like Le'Veon Bell a little bit more than most, I think. I'm going to have him, like right now, in the early ADP, he was going like a 5th, 6th round pick sometimes because people are completely just done with Le'Veon Bell. And I understand the frustration because they drafted him last year in the first round, but I'm telling you, if you get him in the third or the fourth round...
He wasn't terrible, man. He's better than a 5th or 6th round pick.
He's not a league winner. Let's be clear about that. It's almost like he's not a league winner, but he's not going to hurt your fantasy team either. He's not going to lose you a fantasy championship. He's not going to carry you there. And that's why Pirine, to me, is just a guy. He's just a backup that I'm more than willing to let someone blow their waiver wire budget on him over me because he's not going to be a league winner because this isn't a top 10 scoring offense. It's not going to be under Adam Gase. We've kind of learned that by now. So I'm not very interested. In Dynasty, though, it's a little bit more interesting with someone like Pirine because Le'Veon Bell, it's probably just one more year with the Jets, and then, do they move on to Pirine or they draft another running back next year, which is absolutely possible.
Sure, absolutely. I really like the James Morgan pick as well. Now, that's like the number 5 or number 6 quarterback in this draft class, so we don't need to get into it, but I thought that was a nice pick. Who do you guys think the Patriots were planning on drafting at quarterback? Because we heard it wasn't part of the plan to not draft a quarterback. Was it Jalen Hurts, Yates?
No, I don't think so. I never really bought into that unless they were truly going just completely opposite of everything that they've built, there as far as that scheme and what they valued from Tom Brady. So I think Jarrett Stidham fits that mold more than, a Jalen Hurts. Yeah. So I think it would be a complete deviation from what they've built up for them to go, with a Jalen Hurts. As far as who they were targeting, I have no idea because you saw guys the guys who would fit that mold the most would be Jake Fromm and Anthony Gordon. Jake Fromm didn't go to the 5th round.
And they had their chance to get him.
Right. Jake Fromm didn't go to the 5th round, and Anthony Gordon went undrafted. So it's I don't know who they were looking at.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go to the Miami Dolphins. They got their franchise quarterback in the fifth overall pick. There were a lot of smoke screens. I love the landing spot, but what I really love about their draft is the offensive linemen that they got. Austin Jackson in the 1st, Solomon Kinley in the 4th, and Robert Hunt in the 2nd. I love all 3 of those guys. Woo, baby. This offense is going to be good in a couple years.
I mentioned on the live stream, D8, I said that the reason I love this pick, Tua Tagovailoa at 5 overall, was because they didn't trade up. They didn't have to risk anything to take him here.
Yeah.
And if they would have traded up to number 3 and sacrificed, maybe that 18th and 30th pick overall, whatever the case may be, then it would have been okay, you guys took on some more risk and you better hope that Tua pans out. They did not mortgage their future to select Tua here, and I applaud the pick. I do believe that he should have gone to them. I thought the Chargers should have traded traded up in front of them just because the Chargers are a team that's built to win right now. The Dolphins are a bit more rebuilding process, and they couldn't give up all those picks. But I'm happy for the Dolphins fans out there. Jackson was okay. I loved the Raekwon Davis pick in the end of the second round.
Right.
Interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. Him alongside Christian Wilkins is going to be fun to watch. Even Brandon Jones, the safety out of Texas. I thought that they had a really good draft. They had a lot of picks. Curtis Weaver in the 5th round. They took value, and this is a team that.
What'd they do at 130 though, man? That was a serious reach.
What's that?
What'd they do at pick 130 though? That was a huge reach.
Igbenogany. He's someone that did get some first round buzz. I didn't particularly have him up there that high, but some people did have him graded as a borderline first round pick. So I felt like it was a reach considering who was on the board. Like Christian Fulton was still on the board at that point. Jalen Johnson was up there. And so it may have been considered a bit of a reach, but at the same time, it's not like out of this world. But yeah, I like the Dolphins draft. I mean, Yates, I want to move over to the Bills because obviously, if we talk about
really quick, I wanted to touch on the Dolphins really quick because with what I said on the live stream was that this makes sense with the Dolphins, right? As far as their philosophy, that they are not necessarily they're in this long-term rebuild, right? They are blowing everything up and they're going back to square one. And so what you're seeing with these picks is Tua. He's not going to be expected to start week 1 of the 2020 season. Noah Igbenogany has an immense ceiling, but he's still a little bit raw as a corner prospect. Austin Jackson is a little bit raw as a left tackle prospect. So it's like what they're doing is they're allowing these guys to continue to develop, take their time, taking these guys with high ceilings and saying, we're going to be patient. We're going to let them develop and let them take their time. And then, but I had mentioned with the Dolphins here, the big winner from this draft is Jordan Howard. Like, Jordan Howard is now suddenly...
Well, they got Matt Breida as well.
They traded for Matt Breida.
But Breida is not going to be the guy who comes in and takes 250 carries.
Sure, you're right.
You're right. This is going to be a team that wants to rely on the running game. They just weren't able to do it last year because, one, they didn't have anyone. You had Kalen Ballage as your lead running back, Patrick Laird for periods of time last year. But now you have an actual running back like Jordan Howard, and then now you have guys like Robert Hunt and Solomon Kinley up front who are just maulers in the run game. Those, they're going to
And they didn't draft a wide receiver either. Preston Williams, I don't know if he's going to be back week 1, so they're going to run the ball.
Right, they're going to be running the ball. So now there's immense opportunities here for Matt Breida and Jordan Howard, but I would expect Jordan Howard to be that guy. All
right, Buffalo Bills got AJ Epineza. Zack Moss in the 3rd. I don't love that, but from a fantasy perspective, I think he's going to take on the Frank Gore role. That's not someone especially useful for fantasy. What do you think, Yates? Do you think Singletary keeps his job?
I think that with Singletary, and I've always said this since he was drafted, was that Singletary was never meant to be a bell cow back. At 5'7", 100 or 205 pounds or whatever he is, that's not a guy that you give 250 carries to And last year that was proven that he only had I think around 150 carries off the top of my head, but we saw him miss a couple of games, right? Like this is a player that you want to keep in a change of pace role who can be highly efficient. And we saw that last year, averaging over 5 yards per carry. This is a guy that you want in that type of role who can come in and provide a spark. But yet you need a guy who can be a 200-plus carry back, who can wear down a defense. And Zack Moss fits the mentality of Buffalo perfectly. Like if there was a landing spot for me to feel comfortable, because I've been vocal on the podcast that I was down on Zack Moss, right? Just from injury concerns and his style of running. If there was ever a place that fits him perfectly and to maximize his value, it's Buffalo.
I agree with that. Tags, what do you think about Epineza, Gabriel Davis, Jake Fromm? Do you like their draft?
I thought their draft was okay. I didn't
middle of the road, right?
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was anything great. I did like Zack Moss, and just for the record, Bill's GM did go on the record, said that he actually, I'm quoting this, I think that he's more of I think more of the goal line and things like that as we did with Frank last year. You'll see Zach do. I think Devin will do a similar role that he had. So basically, they're anticipating Zack Moss to carry most of definitely the goal line work, if not some of that first and second down work, which is really going to crush the stock for Devin Singletary. So this is going to be somewhat of a timeshare. You could get a feeling like I don't want to say San Francisco light, but something like San Francisco where you had Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert sharing touches. You had Matt Breida and Tevin Coleman sharing touches whenever they were on the field. And that obviously, it puts you in that RB3 territory where you sometimes don't even know who to start, but Zack Moss getting those goal line carries is pretty massive. So unfortunately, this was not good for Devin Singletary. But as for the rest of their draft, I do like that they grabbed Jake Fromm. He was falling down the draft board a lot further than people expected. And even though he's not a plug and play for Josh Allen, they're going to have to create entirely new
Talk
offensive
about
game plan.
Talk about two entirely different quarterbacks.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
man.
completely
but
different.
He's a great backup quarterback. Like if they need to rely on him in year one, if Josh Allen gets hurt, he'll be fine.
But yeah, an overall decent draft. Nothing too crazy that I stand up and say, wow, they deserve an applause.
All right, AFC North, and this is where I've got my number one draft team. Now, Tags, I see you've got the Cleveland Browns as a B+. They're an A+++ for me. Jedrick Wills at 110. I love it. Grant Delpit. Jordan Elliott in the third. Harrison Bryant in the fourth. I love that tight end. Nick Harris fell all the way to the fifth, a great interior offensive lineman. And then our guy, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Apparently he fell. Everyone was asking why he fell. I don't know, man. We'll find out after the draft. The reason he fell is because he was bad-mouthing the Michigan coaching staff, and for good reason, right? But you probably shouldn't do that in the draft process. He's a really good player. And Tags, you think he has a chance to start this year as a sixth-round pick?
I do. We were looking at the depth chart, and I mean, the guys he's got to beat
Damian
out.
Ratley's who he has to pass up. Tywan Taylor.
Yeah, those guys he can beat 100%. So I think it's possible that Donovan Peoples-Jones is actually starting for the Browns in 3 wide receiver sets, that he earns that job. I didn't like the Harrison
Which isn't
Bryant
going to
pick.
happen often with Hooper and Njoku, Harrison Bryant, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, but he'll play.
I felt like the Harrison Bryant pick was trash. It's a 4th-round pick. Like, you can get a player that can help you there. I also don't like the fact that they waited until the end of the 3rd round to select a linebacker because they have the weakest linebacker in probably in the NFL. Like, the linebacking core they have there is not good.
Yeah.
So that was my issue with their draft. I still gave them a B+, so I still liked their draft. I'm along with you in your thinking process throughout a lot of them. I love getting Harris all the way down there in the 5th round. That was a great pick. But again, there was just more about positional needs and some of the positions they addressed. And then I also wonder, Jedrick Wills was a right tackle in college. Jack Conklin came over from the Titans, and he was a right tackle for the Titans. I'm trying to figure out who they're going to plug in at left tackle and just kind of expect them to move there. And not to say that they can't do it, but there was an offensive lineman said it's like wiping your butt with the other hand.
Yates, did the Browns have the best draft in the AFC North, or is there another team that you like more?
Baltimore, for sure. Baltimore.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
Oh,
everyone likes Baltimore's draft. But
oh, my word. Baltimore crushed this draft. Yeah, by far. I think with Cleveland, they got value, and I think they got guys that like draft media likes. Like, I had Nick Harris rated highly. You know, Harrison Bryant I did not have rated highly, and it is a very questionable pick, especially after we saw them pick up the fifth-year option, for David Njoku today.
Yeah.
So now you have Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and you took Harrison Bryant in the 4th round. It's a little puzzling. But I mean, Grant Delpit and Jedrick Wills in the first 2 rounds are home runs. But Baltimore, man, I mean, I can go through their entire draft and be like, man, they got amazing players across the board. I mean, Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison to be your starting linebackers in a position that, you know, needed addressing. Geno Stone, your safety out of Iowa in the 7th round, like, that's incredible. Justin Madubuike, Broderick Washington Jr., these defensive linemen, those were 2 of my favorite defensive linemen, you know, and then Tyree Phillips to be your Marshall Yanda replacement. Like, it's just
this is such a Yates draft, man.
This is my draft, man. Like, I loved this, and J.K. Dobbins is a fantastic pick. So Baltimore, loved it.
All right, Tags. Those are the 2 top drafts in the AFC North. You pick one team remaining from the AFC North. Yates, you pick the other team. We'll cruise through those and then get to the AFC
I actually
South.
had the Bengals as the number 1 team in this division. Their draft, I gave them an A.
Really? Okay.
Obviously, when you get Joe Burrow, you're going to get a good grade.
Oh, well, okay, sure.
They get Joe Burrow. T. Higgins, I love the player. I really hated the fit. I thought it made no sense. But it seems like, you know, and what I think that is still possible, that somehow the Bengals and the Green Bay Packers work out a trade for A.J. Green. That would make all the sense in the world. Obviously, try and get some of the Green Bay's fans back on their side, get Aaron Rodgers back on their side. But T. Higgins, good football player. I didn't love like where he landed just because he's not going to get an opportunity right away. I can't see it. But then they drafted 3 linebackers and 3 guys that can play: Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and Marcus Bailey. This was the weakest linebacker core in the NFL, and they kind of addressed it. And in Davis-Gaither, he fell only because he's got some knee thing going on, and they couldn't really test him out. But he's a guy that has 2nd round talent, fell to the 4th round. I actually like
Logan Wilson has 1st round talent, man. It was a great draft. The whole AFC North killed it.
Yeah, I like them quite a bit. And like, to me, I always weigh the top of the draft a bit more than the later, just because obviously you can't screw up the top of the draft, because that's where, you know, those are the guys that are going to impact things right away. And obviously Burrow is going to do that.
All right, Yates, give me your take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chase Claypool, Alex Highsmith. I like Anthony McFarland as a backup running back to James Conner. Besides that, It was not a good draft. Tags, you gave him a D. I gave him a D+. What do you think, Yates?
Yeah, it's not good. Chase Claypool in the second round. It's not necessarily like looking at Chase Claypool and saying like, okay, him in the second round is because he ran super fast and NFL teams love that. And, I saw some things on tape that make me think.
Field.
I saw some things on tape that make me think like, okay, he can be a great like tight end in the short passing game. He's great on crossers and get the ball in his hands. I didn't like him downfield. But you look at this wide receiver core, you go, where does he play? Like, who are you taking off the field? Are you moving on from James Washington?
James Washington, seems
but it's like James Washington is that a bit of a field stretcher, right? Like Chase Claypool doesn't necessarily bring that unless you are trying to bring some size to the position downfield, because I don't know.
Haven't you seen the Calvin Johnson comparison?
Oh my word! So like,
I'm not kidding. People are doing this stuff.
Yeah,
Steelers fans are going to be really mad at us. I'm sorry. Like, guys, if we don't like your draft, I'm sorry. If you like it, awesome, good for you. I don't like the Jags draft. Yates and Tags hate the Bears draft.
Yep.
We're not trying to be mean. We don't have anything against any,
No, I love
any teams.
I love the Anthony McFarland pick, though. Like, I think that's a beautiful pick. Alex Highsmith, your edge player, he brings some upside. I get it, but I just think that starting off your draft with Chase Claypool is a bit of a rough place to start.
Yeah.
I actually love Antonio Brooks, a safety out of Maryland. Tons of upside there. Let's go to the AFC South. Tags, you pick the first team.
All right, so I'm going to go with my highest grade. I'm going to say it was the Tennessee Titans. It was this. I didn't feel like this was a division that like nailed, like anybody like crushed it, because I gave the Titans a B-, but partially because
the Titans did Titan things, which is what's important.
Yeah, I mean Christian Fulton in the back of the second round. I'm still trying to figure out why he fell.
I have no idea.
He's a guy that I thought might go top 20. And I think everybody thought he'd go first round, but he fell to the end of the second round. That's a steal there for a team that could have used a cornerback. They got Isaiah Wilson at the end of that first round. Wilson, again, I'm not crazy high on him, but considering the need that they have, I think that was best case scenario for them. Darrington Evans is perfect alongside of Derrick Henry.
Man, if Derrick Henry gets hurt, dude, what? He's going to be so good.
Upside there for sure. I liked him quite a bit. So they got the best grade because I think they hit on the first three rounds. After that, I was kind of like, meh. I didn't love it. Cole McDonald taking him in the seventh, it just felt like a wasted pick to me. But I gave them a B- because they hit on the first 3 days. But yeah, outside of that, I just didn't feel like this was a very strong division for drafts.
All right, Yates, give us a team to cover, buddy.
Yeah, I'll leave the Jaguars to you, buddy. So I'll take the Indianapolis Colts. You talk about a start of a second round. You get Jonathan Taylor, and then you back it up with Michael Pittman Jr. Or if it was the other way around, I can't remember.
Yeah, Pittman first. Yeah, crazy.
Pittman first, Taylor second. So, I mean, Pittman was one of my favorite wide receivers in this class. He fits perfectly into the wide receiving core that you have there as a complement to T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell, Zach Pascal being your fourth wide receiver. Jonathan Taylor behind this offensive line, like, good night. So I think I was going through...
Well, is he going to play over Marlon Mack?
Yeah, completely. I was going through...
I hope you're right, man. I don't know if it happens right away.
I was going through and doing projections, and like the Indianapolis Colts run the ball a ton for that offense, and you're talking about a quarterback in Phillip Rivers who does not run the ball at all. So he's not taking away overall rushing attempts.
Yeah.
So you still have like a ton of work available for Marlon Mack. I gave him around like 125 carries in projections. Jonathan Taylor like 225, 240. Like there's still a ton. So he's not going to bring...
Is it the best offensive line in football?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. He's not going to bring, he's not going to bring passing upside, pass catching upside, but what he can do behind this offensive line is amazing. And then, you shored up some other spots. I wasn't crazy about Jacob Eason. He's a developmental quarterback.
In the fourth, though, and developing behind Rivers?
Right. He's a developmental quarterback, but I wasn't a huge fan of his. So, but Danny Pinter in the fifth, it was a good draft.
Yeah, I agree. Tags, you gave him a C+. I gave him a B, a solid B. And we were a little bit more harsh on our rankings than a lot of people. Everyone's like, hey, give everyone an A and a B, and maybe we'll give the Packers a D+. That's not cool. Like, grade on a bell curve. Like,
exactly.
An A doesn't mean anything if you don't have an F. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, I agree. I think the Colts have the best offensive line in football, and this makes Jonathan Taylor my number 2 dynasty pick behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Let's go to the Jags. This is my team. So, I didn't love Henderson being reached for in the 9th overall pick. Some people would say it's not a reach. Chason going 120. That's about where he belongs. He's a good fit for the Jags and what they need. I like Shenault in the second round, and here's why. First of all, the Jags don't really have a wide receiver need. You talked about it, Yates. He needs to pass Conley. I don't know if he does that this year. He's banged up. But long term, he's got that round 1 upside, so I like that pick. Ben Bart's dropping to the 4th. I didn't like their late round picks though, so I gave them a D+. Tags, you gave them a C-. Yates, what do you have for the Jags? Decent draft?
Yeah, and I didn't do number grades at all. So, but I'll just talk about, I think being able to add in, like CJ Henderson, he fits a huge need, and Josiah Scott in the 4th, and Chris Claybrooks in the 7th, So, like, you're shoring
awesome UDFAs too. They had great UDFAs.
Yeah, you're shoring up some great positions of need, and then I wasn't crazy about Laviska. I think Colin Johnson in the 5th is a perfect red zone player. Like, he brings something to that offense that they don't have. And so, I think that looking across, they filled a ton of needs, which they needed to. And it wasn't necessarily that you were going to land these top tier guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, day 3 picks, but you added and addressed a ton of needs. So I think I would give them, if I were assigning a grade right now, it'd probably be around like a C+.
Okay. Tags, you get the most exciting draft in the whole world, the Houston Texans. Wow, this was a boring draft.
It was boring. I mean, Blacklock and Greenard, I actually like both players. I think that they were fine picks. Blacklock was actually who I mocked to them. Greenard, I felt like the interior of that offensive line needed some help. I still feel that way. So I don't know. They only had 5 picks in this draft. It's not like they could have done a whole lot. But the reason that they actually got a D+ in my grade, because obviously those 2 players are fine. It's because you don't have a first round pick and you lost DeAndre Hopkins in the process. I mean, I know that we have to add Brandon Cooks in there as part of the draft class, but even then, it's a net loss. You guys started with negative equity, and you didn't make up for it. So even taking Isaiah Coulter in the 5th round, why? I mean, this team, there's a lot going on with this team. There's a lot wrong with this team, and I think Houston Texans fans can agree with that.
I really like the Blacklock pick. I didn't give him a bad grade. Let's move on to the AFC West, though. Yates, who do you want to start us off with?
AFC West, I'll actually I'll go with. No, I'll leave Kansas City for Tags there. I'll go with Denver. Denver, goodness gracious, they are adding speed. Like, you talk about a stud draft, it's Denver. Like, you add Jerry Jeudy in the 1st, KJ Hamler in the 2nd, Albert Okwuegbunam in the 4th to be your tight end 2. Like, you're just running seams with Noah Fant and Albert O all day long. And just putting the ball in their hand.
Drew Lock is licking his chops,
dude. Oh, my word. And then you add guys like Lloyd Cushenberry in the 3rd, which Tags and I talked about. We weren't super impressed with him on tape, but in the 3rd round, like, he's a starting
but he's plug and
center.
play. That's exactly what they needed.
Exactly. Netane Muti in the 6th. I mean, you're adding guys, and then you address, some corner needs, some linebacker needs. They addressed the needs that they had on their roster and did it in a great way. And Drew Lock is now set up for immense success.
Yeah. Yep. I love their 7th round pick too, Derek Tuska, edge out of North Dakota State. Lots of upside. Let's go to the Las Vegas Raiders. That's who I'll cover here. Let me pull up their draft really quick. Sorry about that.
They started out. I mean, you could just say they started out with the wrong pick.
Yeah, I was looking for Oakland. What is this, okay? I got a lot of heat on Twitter from Raiders fans. What in the heck are you guys doing? Drafting the number 3 or number 4 best wide receiver on his college team as the first wideout off the board at pick number 12. And then you reach for Damon Arnett at pick 119. Now, I actually like Arnett a little bit, okay? I thought he would have been a solid 2nd round pick. He was projected to go in the 3rd round. You're taking him at pick 19. If you want that guy, trade back. What are you doing?
Yeah, get a 2nd round pick because, like, obviously, they didn't have one of those. And the Ruggs picks, to me, it just made no sense. You have Tyrell Williams who could stretch the field a little bit. You already have your Hunter Renfrow. You need an alpha wide receiver.
Well, they got one in the 3rd round, man. Yeah. I like the rest of their draft.
I don't think they got an alpha in the 3rd round. I like Bryan Edwards.
Not an alpha, but I'm telling you, Bryan Edwards is going to lead this team in targets in 2020.
Yep.
That's possible.
You think so too, Yates?
I'm right there.
Okay, good. Yeah,
I'm right there.
He's a good football player.
When we were on the live stream and we were talking about Henry Ruggs at 12 to Las Vegas, we were like, this does not make any sense from a overall scheme perspective. Yep. Like, where are you playing him as your X receiver on the line? Like, this just doesn't make any sense. But then you back up and you take into the context the overall puzzle of the draft, and you say, okay, they had Bryan Edwards in mind the entire time. And Bryan Edwards can fit into Bryan Edwards should have been a 1st round pick if he wasn't dealing with all these injuries, just nagging injuries throughout the entire pre-draft process. Edwards has great tape. He can be that alpha receiver. I'm going to say that he can, like Bobby said, like, he can lead this team in targets. Henry Ruggs is going to take over that Tyrell Williams role. You have Hunter Renfrow in the slot. I think Tyrell Williams is done in Las Vegas.
In the live chat, somebody was asking me, what does the Henry Ruggs pick do for Darren Waller? I was like, well, we knew they were going to draft a wide receiver, and then they draft one who doesn't demand a bunch of targets. This is a win for Waller, and then they go out and draft Bryan Edwards and Lynn Bowden on the third round.
Right.
Now, I actually gave them a decent grade because I love what they did third round through fourth round. They got a Meek Robertson at 4/139 as well. I think that was a great pick.
Yeah, John Simpson, your interior offensive lineman, too, a guard there to be the backup there. I liked him, too. So, yeah, it's a good draft.
All right, Tags, you want to take the Chargers or the Chiefs?
I mean, I'll go with the Chiefs. It's a very short draft, so I gave them a C, and it's not because of the players they drafted I don't like them. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is obviously, he was my number one running back in this class. I love the fit, and if you haven't heard already, Andy Reid has said on film that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is better than Brian Westbrook, and basically the Chiefs GM called or texted Patrick Mahomes and said, "Who do you want?" And he said Clyde. So that he's going to be he's the 101 in Dynasty rookie drafts.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's no question to me.
Do you agree, by the way, Yates, 101?
He's in that range. It kind of put him in a tier where I have Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Put him in a tier. I don't care who you take at 101.
I'm taking Helaire 101. Sorry for interrupting.
No, same. Yeah, I'm with you though. Willie Gay, it was a need at linebacker. Lucas Niang, I actually love him. I had him as my number 5 offensive tackle in this draft. The issue is that they bypassed some other needs that weren't met.
He's a little raw too, man. Like the Chiefs are win now.
I like him. I think they're going to move him to the interior, is my guess with him, and that's going to work out just fine. But
you guys know I love Willie Gay, by the way, in the second round. If he can stay out of trouble off the field, this is a great pick.
It could be, yeah, for sure. And that's what I'm saying. I think that they had a good draft in terms of what they did. My issue is that they didn't draft an edge rusher or a cornerback until the 5th and 7th rounds. That was my issue with their draft, is that they really just took the best player on their board rather than addressing their team needs. So I gave him a C because I'm gonna call it an average draft.
All right, Yates, you've got the Chargers, Justin Herbert, Kenneth Murray, our dude. After that, it was kind of ugly, though.
Yeah, I think, Justin Herbert, I've been vocal that I'm not the biggest Justin Herbert guy, but when you have identified that you have a quarterback in mind to be your guy, you get him no matter where. You just take him. So I get the pick there, and if there was an offense for him to be a fit in, it's Los Angeles. So I don't think that he's necessarily going to be a top-tier starter ever in the NFL. But he can be a really good quarterback for the Chargers. I think, trading second and third round picks to come up and get Kenneth Murray was a little puzzling to me. I don't know if you necessarily should have given up all those assets, but to get the player Kenneth Murray for your defense, now you're talking about Kenneth Murray, Derwin James, on the same defense, Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, that's just an insane defense. They're loading up here. So I loved the Josh Kelly pick in the 4th round.
Did you?
You needed...
I didn't, because it killed Justin Jackson, man. Get out of here.
Well, I mean, Justin Jackson was never going to be that guy that you felt comfortable giving, a significant amount of work to. So Josh Kelly can be that guy. He was someone that I liked on tape, and I think he fits this offense really well.
Interesting. Yeah. I think Herbert helps out Mike Williams a fair amount. Let's move on to the NFC East. And Tags, I'm going to let you pick first. We're going to skip me.
I mean, the Dallas Cowboys, one of the best drafts in the entire league. I loved their draft. I mean, I didn't love the CeeDee Lamb pick at first, but then the more you think about it, it's like they got a player. I can't be mad, because I was more of it wasn't really, I know they needed a third wide receiver, but to get him at 117, it just felt you took best player available on your board, and that's probably fine, because some teams do that and it does work out. It's better to take a player that you know is going to be good rather than one that you're hoping is going to be good to fill a need. At 117,
also Randall Cobb had 830 yards last year. It's not like he's walking into no role at all.
They also threw the ball a ton last year.
And they're going to again.
They had Amari Cooper dealing with some injuries. They had Michael Gallup miss a few games. So there's a few things that play into that. But it obviously crushes Michael Gallup's stock. This is going to hurt real bad. The more I thought about this, the more I was like, yeah, it's going to hurt Gallup a lot. But Trayvon Diggs in the 2nd round, a guy that had 1st round talent. If you can get it out of him consistently, because it's more about consistency with Trayvon Diggs for me. It has nothing to do with talent, because when he's giving it his all, he's a baller. Neville Gallimore in the 3rd round, Reggie Robinson and then in the 4th, and then the Eagles. You guys screwed up here. They really screwed up.
Oh, this was the worst.
You almost never see trades in the division, especially with your rival, your biggest rival right here. The Eagles trade the pick to the Cowboys so they can come up and select their Travis Frederick replacement. He retired this offseason, obviously, with the health stuff.
And they get the best interior offensive lineman in the class in the 4th round with the Eagles pick.
It's insane. I couldn't believe it when it happened. I'm like, you guys just gifted them this pick. And then Bradley and I, in the 5th round, I love their draft. I think they did a phenomenal job.
It's so funny, man. I've had Eagles people texting me, not texting me, shooting me tweets all over the spectrum like, did we get an F? Was our draft that horrible? And then I'm listing my top 3 drafts and the Eagles aren't in there, and Eagles fans are like, what the heck? Why aren't the Eagles in there? Look, I like Jalen Hurts a lot. I don't know why you took him in the second round, but I like him a lot. And I've heard some people say this too. It makes a lot of sense with the COVID stuff. Like, if your quarterback gets sick and has to miss 2 or 3 weeks, it's more likely that your quarterback's going to miss some time now with what's going on. And also, Carson Wentz is a little bit injury prone, right? Like, if you can get a quarterback who's playing 25% of the time, who's a lot better than the other quarterbacks who are backing up, I think that makes plenty of sense in the second round. I don't mind a backup quarterback. Now, if you've got someone like Jordan Love, who's a developmental guy, who's not going to help you right now when you need to win, that's a totally different thing. We'll get to that. But I like the pick in the second round. Jalen Reagor, I don't know why you took him over Justin Jefferson, but it's not a bad pick. After that, Prince Tega Waganu in the 6th round, I think it was a solid all-around draft. The Eagles, I gave them a B+. I definitely don't hate it for those of you wondering.
I felt like outside of Jalen Hurts, they had a good draft. And that's the sad part, is that they're going to be remembered for that, though.
Yeah.
It's not as egregious
if
the
Wentz
Packers
gets hurt
trading
for 8
up.
games and Jalen Hurts comes and plays 8 really good games,
Right.
I don't think they'll regret it.
Well, right, and that's the thing. That's more of like a what if scenario, and I don't think in the NFL you could plan for that with your franchise quarterback, and they have their franchise quarterback.
And especially, sorry, Tech. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good, man. I felt like Jake Fromm would fit this offense just fine. Nick Foles stepped into that role and was able to maneuver that offense. I felt like you could take someone like Fromm later in the draft, I have no issue with Hurts. That's the thing, is that I want people to know is these are the picks that upset me, because I feel like you're really letting down your quarterback here. Is that this is a team that you won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. You still have a decent roster. You've built some things through free agency. You got your secondary figured out, and then it's like, okay, we got a receiver in the first. Awesome. We need a linebacker really bad. And I like Davian Taylor, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend he's a plug-and-play guy that is a can't-miss player at linebacker. He's a very high upside player, and I do like Taylor as a pick. And that's why I say I like Kayvon Wallace too. Jack Driscoll, I like their draft outside of that one, because I feel like you kind of stuck it to your franchise quarterback in Carson Wentz and said, we don't trust you to stay healthy. But
I mean, ask Eagles fans. Are you glad you had Nick Foles on your team? And the answer is yes, man. They're going to build him a freaking statue.
For sure. But could they have gotten that quarterback later in the draft? Yes.
Absolutely. That's my whole thing, is that you negated value with this pick. That you chose to look at the rest of your roster and say that, rather than take a linebacker, which we have a desperate need for, rather than a center, right? Jason Kelsey's probably not here for the long term. I'm just throwing out some needs on that roster. Rather than addressing those, we are saying that we don't believe that our quarterback can stay healthy, even though we just signed him to a major long-term contract, that we don't believe he can stay healthy enough, that we need to take a quarterback in the second round and instead of looking at those other needs. That's the whole thing. It's not necessarily Jalen Hurts, the quarterback prospect, or anything like that. It's just now you have your best case scenario is that Jalen Hurts never sees the field, because then you have Carson Wentz actually playing all 16 games every year. So at that point, then you've wasted a second round pick rather than try to take a James Morgan in this, 5th round, 4th round, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, Yates, you want Washington or the Giants?
I'll take the Giants, because I absolutely loved the first part of this draft. I think that on day 3, loading up with 4 linebackers, that's just dart throws, right? It's just putting all 4 darts in your hand and throwing them at the dartboard and hoping that one hits the bullseye. So I think I don't mind that. I don't mind it either, but it's just comical that you take 4 linebackers in the 6th and the 7th rounds there. Darnay Holmes in the 4th is a home run pick. Xavier McKinney in the 2nd for that defense is a home run pick. Yeah. Andrew Thomas in the 1st was not necessarily where we thought they were going to go, but I like the fit. I mean, it's great news for Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. And then, Matt Pert, I was super high on Matt Pert.
I know you love him.
And so you can kick him inside to guard, or he can be the long-term answer at behind Nate Solder there. And then Shane Lemieux in the 5th, right? They hit home runs at all parts of the draft, and I really, really liked it.
Tags, you gave them a C+. I don't know why, man. I got the Giants an A-. I love this draft.
Well, it's weird because I love Andrew Thomas. Xavier McKinney, I think, is overrated. People have compared him to Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think that he's a very, very, very light version of that. Pert was fine in the 3rd. I felt Holmes was a decent value there. Lemieux is fine. And then I didn't like the rest of their draft, as you mentioned. Like, they just like it's literally like they just threw a bunch of picks hoping it would stick. And typically at the linebacker position, 6th, 7th round, it's not going to work out. So, I mean, I felt like it was fine. I gave him a better. I think it's slightly above average, which is I think I got a C+. I think for me, C is average, and then I got a C+, just because. Again, I like that they didn't screw up that 104 pick because, again, Andrew Thomas was my favorite tackle in this draft, but McKinney, I'm not a huge McKinney guy. He was, now granted, if he turns out to be a player, I'm wrong on my draft grade because he is a versatile player, but I just don't think that he's a top-tier safety.
Yates, I'm surprised you didn't take Washington because they drafted Antonio Gandy Golden, who's your guy. Why don't you talk on him before Tags gets to the rest of the team? So
Tags and I were messaging earlier about this because I was going through and doing Washington's projections for 2020, and I was like, okay, I love the fit for Antonio Gandy Golden in Washington because there's, you have Terry McLaurin, and then you have Kelvin Harmon, and then Steven Sims, right? Like, there's kind of this question mark behind him. Antonio Gandy Golden is the first wide receiver that this new coaching regime has taken, so they clearly believe in him and have faith in him. But now it's just going to be the question of philosophy and does he beat out Kelvin Harmon, which I think he can. So now if you're looking at Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gandy Golden on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, and then you bring on Kelvin Harmon potentially and slide Terry McLaurin into the slot. Like, I'm trying to figure out what the philosophy and actual practicality this is going to look like from a fantasy perspective.
They're going to play Gibson on the field while guys
that was what one thing that I was talking about too was do they use Gibson as that slot receiver? So I think Antonio Gandy Golden is going to be the starter. I think he'll beat out Kelvin Harmon there, but it's just going to be a question of what does it actually look like. But Chase Young, Antonio Gandy Golden, 2 of my favorite players in the class, and they both landed in Washington. I love it.
Tags, we covered pretty much everyone. Sorry, dude.
No, believe me, it's good. I mean, I do want to throw in, I think that the Redskins could be that sleeper defense in your fantasy draft. I think they could be very, very good this year, that defense.
Really quick, Thaddeus Moss lands as the UDFA in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
You have Richard Rodgers, Logan Thomas, Jeremy Sprinkle are your tight ends in front of him. Does Thaddeus Moss win that job?
Oh, well, I mean, with the foot injury, I don't know, because he had to have surgery on that foot. If he didn't have to have that, then I would have said absolutely. But
that's crazy.
As a long-term answer, you can snag him late in a dynasty draft and just kind of sit him there on your bench and just hope over the year it happens because he does present some upside, but that foot injury was the biggest worrisome part because he's still recovering from that.
Right.
I'm going to say no, he doesn't start because their starting tight end is going to be O.J. Howard. How's that sound? Okay, let's move to the NFC North. And man, this is really tough because I love the Vikings draft, but I'm just so excited to talk about the Packers. And what the heck were they doing here? They go out and they trade up for Jordan Love at 126. Oh my goodness. Aaron Rodgers has 2 more years on he has 4 more years on his contract. He can opt out after 2. They'd have to eat some money. Jordan Love's not going to play for at least 3 years. And I don't like him. I had a 3rd-round grade on him. I know you guys were with me. And then they go out and take A.J. Dillon, a fullback, in the 2nd round. He's 255 pounds, man. You take this dude in the 2nd round when you've already got Aaron Jones. So you've got Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers. You get replacements for both of them. Everybody already knows this because we've just beat the dead horse. And then they get Josiah Dugararu, whatever his name is. He was like a 6th-round pick, and they drafted him in the 3rd round. And Yates, they're turning him into a fullback. What in the world is going on here? They didn't have a single good pick. You look at the rest of their draft, it sucked top to bottom. Every single pick was an F. Oh, man, this is the worst draft I've ever seen.
It's really bad. And I think that, we have to preface this by saying that, yes, Tags and I are Bears fans, but we're critical of all teams, right? We're going to say if they knocked a draft out of the park or if they missed, right? And so we can sit here and we'll talk about the Bears. I wasn't a huge fan of their draft in different parts, but man, Green Bay, Jordan Love, in trading up into the 1st round, that's one thing if you let him fall to you and then you take Jordan Love in the back of the 1st round, but you're also talking about Aaron Rodgers still has a $51 million cap hit next year and a $30-something million cap hit next year. So Jordan Love is not seeing the field. And you choose to go through your entire draft and you do not take one single wide receiver. When Aaron Rodgers comes out the day of the draft and says that, hey, it would be really nice if we added a skill position player. What they did was they gave him a middle finger and said, nope, we're going to draft
best wide receiver draft class of all time, too, and they don't get a single
exactly.
one.
In the deepest wide receiver class we have potentially ever seen, they do not take a wide receiver and instead draft his replacement, draft a 3rd-string running back in the 2nd round, and then draft a tight end who you are going to now move to an H-back role that you believe that can be Kyle Juszczyk out of San Francisco. Like,
I don't know, man. You say third string. This team's so stupid. They might start A.J. Dillon over Aaron Jones.
I mean, we've talked about Matt LaFleur being this guy. Like, when Matt LaFleur came in and we were wanting to free Aaron Jones, right? Like, that was the mantra of the fantasy community was like, free Aaron Jones,
Holy
please. Cow. And then Matt LaFleur comes in and continuously talks about, oh, we want more running backs in here. And you're just like, no, what are you doing? Aaron Jones is a phenomenal running back. So now if this is your long-term plan that you are now going to let Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams walk in free agency next year, which I believe their contract is up next year. If it's not, then this is an even more ridiculous move. But then, and A.J. Dillon is now your starter for the future. I just don't get it. I don't know what they're doing when you have,
and they're still going to win 10 or 11 games because they have Aaron Rodgers.
Because of Aaron Rodgers. When you have an interior defensive line need that is so desperate, when you saw the San Francisco 49ers run game go all over you in the NFC Championship game, and you don't draft a single defensive lineman,
yep,
it's ridiculous.
As Bobby said, it's the worst draft I've ever seen. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I follow the Bears. It has nothing to do with it because you're going to hear that Detroit they're actually my biggest winner of the draft. Minnesota had a great draft.
I thought you were talking about the Bears having the biggest. I was like,
the Packers, think about this just for a minute. This is a team that went to the NFC Championship last year. Yes, it was probably the worst 13-3 team I've seen. But still, they made it to the NFC Championship, and you're never going to be bad when you have Aaron Rodgers, right? And in the first 3 rounds of the draft, you trade up for a backup quarterback in the first. You draft a third-string running back, and then a backup tight end that you're going to turn into a fullback. And then the rest of the draft, you just go interior lineman. You snag a linebacker. You snag a cornerback. This was absolutely terrible. And I said, Aaron Rodgers, it's a legitimate possibility that Aaron Rodgers says, I want out. Trade me.
Yep.
And then I posted a poll on Twitter saying, what can the Packers realistically get for Rodgers? Like, what do you think he would net in a return? I'm curious as to what you guys would say. But the poll, people 30% say that he get a first round pick and then a day 2 pick. 27% of people said multiple first round picks. 24% said just one first round pick. So Aaron Rodgers.
Hold on a second. If the Packers have $51 million in dead cap space, that means $51 million the team acquiring him doesn't have to pay. I'd pay 4 or 5 first round picks for Aaron Rodgers. I'm not exaggerating.
I mean, I would do a minimum of 2. If the Packers are taking all of that cap hit and absorbing a lot of his salary, and I don't have to restructure his contract, yeah, I'll pay 2 first rounders for Aaron Rodgers if I have a dire quarterback need. Like, this is Aaron Rodgers we're talking about.
Yep.
All right, Tex, you want to cover the Bears or the Vikings?
I mean, I guess I'll do the Bears.
Yeah, baby, let's get feisty, Tags.
No, you're not. It's more disappointed, Tags is all it is. I just said, someone actually asked me after the draft, they said, give me in 3 words, describe the Bears draft. And I said, tired of this. The Bears now have 10 tight ends on their roster. They needed to fill a void on the offensive line. They didn't do it. Kyle Long, obviously he trended downhill. He didn't look very good towards the end, but they still lost him on the offensive line. They did not replace him until the 7th round here with two offensive linemen. And
that have amazing names. I have to interject
I'm not even
here.
going to try it. Not even going to try it.
Arlington Hambright and Lacavius Simmons. Those are the 2 names.
You're
of the
a lot
offensive
better
linemen.
at names than we are, man.
Yeah, but what I'm saying here is that if you watched the Bears last year, you would understand that offensive line was continually a problem, and they did nothing to address it. Instead, I like Jalen Johnson as a second round pick. He's fine there because he got first round buzz.
That was the only decent
Kindle
pick,
Vildor in the 5th round. Those are 2 fine picks, and I actually like Travis Gibson. Cole Kmet, I came around on to say that I think he's a smarter football player than he is an athlete. And then he showed up as an athlete at the combine. It's like, okay, I'm a little torn here, and I think he's fine. But I have an issue with the way that the Bears approached this draft. I don't think that they necessarily got bad football players. I think that they just did not. I feel like this team is just being built incorrectly. I think it's Ryan Pace's last year, and Matt Nagy might go down with that ship. I do believe that continually they're trading future picks to move up, and I'm just tired of it. Honestly, it's a little old. It's a little old.
Packers had the worst draft. I've got the Bears as the 2nd worst draft. Yates, are you with me?
No, I don't think that I would have them all the way down there. I think that
Okay.
Jalen Johnson addressed a huge need. You needed to do something opposite of Kyle Fuller. While I'm not necessarily the biggest Jalen Johnson fan, I would have, loved Christian Fulton. I think Trayvon Diggs.
I don't know if Johnson helps immediately. Fulton would have.
Yeah, Trayvon Diggs was on the board too. I would have taken either of them. So it's like, I think that there are players. Cole Kmet, I'm not a huge fan of. I'm going to be honest. And that's been clear. Like, I'm not a huge Cole Kmet fan, but you need to do something at the tight end position if you move on from Trey Burton. So, like, I get it. I just don't think that they filled it with the right players. The one home run pick in all this is Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is a wide receiver out of Tulane who fits perfectly into that Taylor Gabriel role as a stretching the field. So I think that they need to do something else to bring in another player like that. But he's going to start. I think he's going to start right away in that role.
All right, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings. This was my number 2 grade in the class. It's all with the first 4 picks, right? Justin Jefferson, great at 122, dropping to him. They traded back and still got Jeff Gladney, a great cornerback. Ezra Cleveland fell to 258 out of Boise State, offensive tackle. Cameron Dantzler in the 3rd. Holy cow, what a start. I had them as they're running away with the best draft in the class, and then I had the Browns passing him up. They also got Troy Dye in the 4th. That's a great pick. Kenny Willix in the 7th round is a very good pick. Now, they had a ton of picks. They got some extra picks next year as well. Awesome, awesome draft. A+ for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I'll echo that. That they masterfully handled this entire draft, where you trade down in certain parts, you accumulate, later picks, and then you trade those later picks for future picks. Like, they just navigated the board so well, addressed some critical needs, and shored up some really, potential weak spots on their roster. Kenny Willekes in the 7th round, is a great pick for that defense. I'm not a huge DJ Wonnum fan. I think but James Lynch, I'm not the biggest James Lynch fan, but he fits that role.
I liked him.
So, I think that they did a masterful job of handling the draft board and navigating it and setting themselves up for future success, though.
I mean, the reason I gave him a B+, I loved their first 3 rounds, as you guys have gone through. Ezra Cleveland, I felt like was a little overvalued, but getting him in the 2nd round was better than the first. But to me, I think there is such a thing as having too many draft picks. And I say that because a lot of these guys are going to get cut. You're going to have to cut guys in your current roster, and it's just like you're getting a bunch of crap. I would have rather traded like a variety of picks, and they did ended up trading a lot of their day 3 picks that they had because they actually had more. I think they went in with like 17 picks on day 3, which is just crazy. But I would have rather moved up a little bit more because DJ Wonnum was that was like the worst case scenario as an edge rusher, because if they lose Everson Griffin, their defensive line, they're not going to have any pass rush, and that's going to be a real problem.
You know why I'm so excited about them having so many picks? It's because it means there's a chance that Mike Boone gets cut, and then the Jags trade Leonard Fournette, and I get Mike Boone as my starting running back, baby.
For Leonard Fournette. Stop it.
Oh, man. I hope they do. And then Raquel Armstead, we can get him for 3 downs. Let's go to the Detroit Lions. Yates, this is you.
Yeah. I mean, DeAndre Swift, I'll start at the top. Jeff Okudah, home run pick at number 3 overall. I think that, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of taking a corner that high, but when it's a corner like Jeff Okudah, and how important he is to your scheme, it's a home run. So then DeAndre Swift in the 2nd, I predicted that the Lions were going to take a running back at that spot. For them to grab DeAndre Swift, I actually thought it was going to be Jonathan Taylor, but DeAndre Swift, he's going to be that guy that takes over that workload, and then you have Kerryon Johnson moving into like a pass catching role. And we'll touch more on these guys, in the later podcast this week as far as how this all plays out for fantasy. But like DeAndre Swift is a home run pick. He is going to help your team immediately because you saw what happened when Kerryon Johnson went down, right? It was Bo Scarborough and Ty Johnson, so it's like you can't win games like that. You needed to do something at the running back position. You bring in DeAndre Swift. It's a great move. Julian Okwara in the 3rd, Jonah Jackson, Logan Stenberg, like Quintez Cephas, like they just grab these guys that
it's a good draft,
like
man.
I really, really like. But you started to see towards the later picks that they started to fall back into like Lions drafting, right? Where they're taking guys that we have absolutely no idea who they are. Jason Huntley out of New Mexico State, no idea who he is. And I, spent a ton of time researching these prospects. So he could turn into something, and I just missed. But that's but the first part of their draft, they crushed it.
Yep.
You watched tape on everyone. Like your entire offseason, that's all you did, and you didn't know who Jason Huntley is.
I had no idea.
Hilarious, man. Yep. Not hilarious against you, hilarious that the Lions picked him. So let's go on over to the NFC South. Why don't you start us off, Tags? What team do you want to talk about?
NFC South, I mean, Carolina, I think that's an easy one to start with. I did like what they did. It's weird to see it happen, but it did. Every single round, all 7 picks that they made were all defense. And, Yates and I had been talking about throughout the entire offseason, going through the depth charts of these teams and finding all the weaknesses. They had so many weaknesses in that team. The only thing that I fear for them is that they might regret passing on Isaiah Simmons. They're on the board at 107. But Gross Matos in the second, he fell. Chin fell to the third. Troy Pride in the fourth. I really did like their draft. It's just
solid.
I feel like that one pick up top, it could come back to haunt them, because I think it's easier, especially in this draft. I think it was easier to find a defensive lineman a little bit further down, because I think a lot of defensive linemen fell further than people thought. But I can't fault them for taking Derek Brown. He's a good player. I just felt like Isaiah Simmons could have been a generational player.
You know what I think? I think that Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers are going to win 8 games this year. I think he's that good of a coach. I really like that he addressed the defense as much as he did. I think the offense is in pretty good shape as well.
I think that defense still has a lot of work to do. But
it does.
They need a couple of these guys to pan out, and as long as they do, then they'll be on the right path. But they play in probably the toughest division in football, so I'm going to say that they do not win 8 games.
Where are we going next, Yates?
We can touch on Atlanta, because I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of Atlanta's draft. I mean, you only have how many 5 overall selections?
6 picks, yeah. 6 picks
total. So, I think they did the best that they could with those limited picks. AJ Terrell in the first was a bit of a reach in my from what I saw and what I read, but he's a good player, and so they solved a great need there. So now, but you're still going into your 2020 season with Isaiah Oliver, Kendall Sheffield, and AJ Terrell as your main corners there. So it's like you need to still be doing something else. Marlon Davidson in the second, I wasn't the biggest Marlon Davidson fan, but he does address a need. And then Matt Hennessy, though, in the third is a huge pick for them. It's just going to be a question of where do you play him? Does he actually start on that offensive line? I think he could slide in at left guard. But, I was a little underwhelmed with this draft.
I really was hoping that the Falcons would get Snacks Harrison, since they went out and got a defensive tackle in the second round. I think that puts a cap on it.
Yeah. Well, Marlon Davidson, it's weird. I'm not a big fan of that pick either, just because we don't have much tape on him moving from the edge to the defensive line. But I think it was smart on his part to do it. Obviously, he went up in the second round, because as an edge, he wasn't going to go anywhere near the second round.
Yeah. By the way, everyone's probably going to be saying, well, the Saints don't have any room. How would they get Snacks Harrison? They've got a lot of money coming off the board. I think it's in June. I don't remember who it is, but they're able to cut someone worth $10 million.
Probably Desmond Trufant, I think.
Yeah, I think it is Desmond Trufant. So good. Thanks for remembering that. Let's go to the Tampa Bay Bucks. I really like their draft. And first of all, started with them getting Tristan Wirfs, the number 1 tackle on my board at pick 13. Now, we were thinking they might trade up to number 7 to go get a tackle, and it probably wouldn't be as good as Tristan Wirfs. And then they go out and get Antoine Winfield in the second round. They get the perfect Bruce Arians running back, Ke'Shawn Vaughn in the third. Is he starting week 1, Tags?
I don't know why he's considered that, because I think that he's a fine receiver in terms of his pass catching ability. I don't think that he's an above average receiver. I don't think
he's not, but he's gonna pass block, man. That's what Bruce Arians like. He doesn't want to send his running back out there. He wants
the pass
to
blocking
protect
thing
Tom
is
Brady.
such crap.
I know it is, but we're talking about what Bruce Arians likes, and he loves guys like this.
I think it's going to be another timeshare, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a timeshare.
Yates is going to fight you
Vaughn.
on this.
No, I mean, the thing is, I think Vaughn's fine. I compared him to someone like Latavius Murray, and I like Latavius Murray. I'm just saying that I don't know that I thought there was just too much similarities. I thought they needed a pass catching back, somebody that can catch passes out of the backfield. Brady has always used his running backs extremely well, and even Arians for that matter. With David Johnson using him in the passing game. So, I mean, I'm fine with it. This more to do with dynasty, because I lowered Ronald Jones down my board in dynasty leagues, and Ke'Shawn Vaughn obviously got more value than I thought he would, because he has a chance to win that job. That's what I'm saying. I don't think Ronald Jones is head and shoulders better. I just don't feel like there's a big gap there where we can say one is the clear-cut option that they're going to go to.
Yates, tell Tags why he's wrong, buddy.
So, I mean, I agree with Tags in the sense that I don't believe that it's going to be like a 80-20 split, right? I don't think that Ronald Jones is going to completely go away. But even if Ke'Shawn Vaughn takes a 60-40% snap share, and he takes that, he's going to be a top 24 back in fantasy football this year. I strongly believe that. I came away extremely impressed with Ke'Shawn Vaughn's receiving ability out of the backfield. He's excellent in pass protection. This is the running back that Bruce Arians has hand-selected. They inherited Ronald Jones. And we saw throughout last year, they were putting Dare Ogunbowale on the field rather than Ronald Jones. Now, Ronald Jones did pick up towards the end of last year, and I'm not going to discredit that, but you're talking about Tom Brady as well. The moment that Ronald Jones steps onto the field and misses one blitz pickup, he's done. Like, Tom Brady's writing him off. So Ke'Shawn Vaughn is so good in pass protection, received one of my highest grades in that field, in that category. And so, man, Ke'Shawn Vaughn, I'm all in for him next year. I think he's going to be an incredible value in dynasty rookie drafts particularly.
I was going to ask you, would you take him over Henry Ruggs III? We'll figure that out later this week, though. Let's save that. Let's move on to the last team in the NFC South. I believe it's the Saints. We haven't talked about the Saints, have we?
They only had 4. They drafted 4 players. Last year, they drafted 5 players.
Cesar Ruiz, however, in the first round. It's a need, man.
It's a need, but I didn't like. I don't like Ruiz. I think Ruiz is overrated.
I mean, we already talked about how we both have Tyler Baez ahead of him, and he went in the 4th round. So,
well, that was injury concerns, though, because I think
sure.
I don't think he would have fallen that far.
Yeah,
Zach Vaughn in the 3rd was a good one.
You think Troutman is the number 1 dynasty tight end?
I haven't,
because we're not drafting him. He's not in the top 24. We're not going to talk about him later this week, but
no.
I think he's the number 1 dynasty tight end.
I agree. I have him there.
It's close with him and Kmet.
Okay. It's definitely not the guy the Packers drafted in the 3rd round. Let's go on to the final division, NFC West. Yates, why don't you start us off? What team do you want to choose?
Yeah, so I'll go with San Francisco. I mean, obviously, starting off your draft with Javon Kinlaw was a bit of a kind of out of left field. You know, it was a pick that
loved it, baby.
You replaced DeForest Buckner with Javon Kinlaw, who has as high of a ceiling as Buckner did coming out of college. I think it's a great move. You continue that recipe for success that got you to the Super Bowl last year. You know, I think Brandon Ayuk, my feelings are very clear on Brandon Ayuk, especially on the live stream. I'm not a huge fan of trading up for Ayuk, especially in a draft where you had such limited draft capital. I think Ayuk isn't going to be much of an option for fantasy football, unfortunately. So I'm not a huge fan of the pick there, especially in the 1st round with some of the other guys that were still available on the board, who would have been available at your pick. Charlie Warner, blocking tight end, Colton McKivitz in the tackle in the 5th or 6th and 5th round, respectively. I'm actually more of a fan of their UDFA. Bringing in Savon Ahmed in undrafted free agency, which I said in January that I could feel like Savon Ahmed was going to be a San Francisco 49er next year. Guys, don't be surprised if we see Jerick McKinnon cut and Savon Ahmed take
He's the new Matt Breida.
He's the new Matt Breida. I would not be surprised at all.
Stupid fast. Yep. I'm going to touch on the Seattle Seahawks. What were you doing? Jordan Brooks at 127 every year, man. Why do they do this?
The one year they didn't trade back. I mean,
if Pete Carroll didn't have Russell Wilson in the 3rd round, he'd be gone a long time ago, man.
Completely.
Well,
man, he's a good coach. Drafting, they're the worst.
That's what I want to say. I want to say that New England, I never liked their drafts. Seattle, I absolutely don't like their drafts, and I don't like this one. But the coaches get the most out of their players, and that's why I think Pete Carroll's a better coach. Now, granted, Russell Wilson happens to be really damn good, and Tom Brady
you think he's a
really
better
good.
coach than Bill Belichick? Is that what you just said?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
he's good.
I do believe he's a top 5 coach in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree, but man, they need to change the way they draft.
I didn't like any other draft outside of Alton Robinson. They got him in the 5th round. That was a steal.
Oh, I love Darrell Taylor. I loved Darrell Taylor.
I like Darrell Taylor. I like DJ Davis.
Dallas.
I don't know. I gave him a D.
Same.
Tags, you gave him a D as well. It sounds like you don't love it either, Yates.
Yeah, no. I mean, Jordan Brooks in the 1st is ridiculous. I did like Darrell Taylor.
Trade back to the 3rd round and get him in.
Right. I did like Darrell Taylor. I think DJ Dallas is a good fit. I mean, they grabbed some good fits. Anthony Gordon in undrafted free agency was, I think, my favorite selection of theirs, if we can call it a selection. I loved Anthony Gordon going there in undrafted free agency because he's the only other quarterback on that roster right now.
Yeah. All right, Tags, why don't you pick your last team, buddy? You want
Arizona.
to go with the Rams or Cardinals? Okay,
No,
Cardinals.
Arizona, one of the better drafts out there, too. Isaiah Simmons going to them at 108. It's going to be so much fun watching him and Budda Baker on the field at the same time. They're both movable chess pieces. They're guys that are going to give that defense some flexibility. And some people were talking about offensive tackle to the Cardinals there. I was one of them. But when Simmons fell there, I was like, they have to go Simmons. He's a centerpiece. They have to build that defense. And then best case scenario, they Josh Jones falls to them in the third round at 72 overall. I don't think that they could have planned that any better. Evan Weaver.
Amazing.
Evan Weaver I liked a lot. For him to fall to the 6th round, I feel like he's a starting talent. Like he's going to be enough. Like he's not going to be a Pro Bowler or anything, but I think he's going to be a player in the NFL. And then Eno Benjamin in the 7th round, a guy that is a perfect backup.
Solid pick again.
I like their draft an awful lot. I gave them an A-.
Yeah.
The only pick I didn't like, Lakai Fotu, I don't like him.
Oh, no, let's fight. Let's fight.
Well, that's the thing.
I was about to say, I like all their
I know
picks.
Yates likes him, but I didn't see it. And it's weird because some people are like, oh, he's Vita Vea light. And I'm like, no, he's not. Like, that dude does not have a motor.
I mean,
That dude does not have a motor like Vita Vea. I didn't like Lakai Fotu.
I can't believe they took him over Rashad Lawrence. I mean, they ended up with Rashad Lawrence anyway. But okay, Yates, why don't you say what you want about Fotu?
Yeah, super quick about Lucky Fotu. Man, this guy is huge, 330 pounds or whatever. He's an elite run stuffer, can occupy multiple blockers, and then has the ability to shed both of those blockers. Like he's just so incredibly powerful, and he also possesses the ability to collapse the pocket. He's not going to get home as a pass rusher and be a guy from a defensive tackle perspective that has 7 sacks a year or whatever. But what he can do is he can collapse the pocket and force your quarterback to move around. When you have a guy like Chandler Jones on the outside, that is beautiful for Chandler Jones to be able to, now you're moving the quarterback right into Jones's path. So Leki Fotu in the 4th round, I loved the pick.
Cool, man. Yeah, the Cardinals had a good draft. My number 5 behind number 1, the Browns, number 2, the Vikings, number 3, the Jets, number 4, the Cowboys. Cardinals had a great draft. Let's move on to the last team, and then this was another boring draft. Yates, why don't you take the Rams?
Oh my
Let's get this over with.
Okay, Cam Akers. I do not understand this fit at all. Like,
don't you feel so bad for him moving from the worst offensive line in college football to the worst offensive line in the
this
NFL?
is completely, like, we've talked about this in multiple other situations where the GM is looking at their roster and just saying, like, no, we're fine. Like, we're fine at these other positions. And instead of saying when they, in the position that you were actually fine in with Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, who you drafted in the 3rd round a year ago,
just sign Carlos Hyde for free.
Yeah, like, you are now saying that this is, rather than address our interior of our offensive line, we are going to draft a running back to be part of a rotational committee again. Because I don't think Cam Akers is going to be assuming the Todd Gurley role. Darrell Henderson is not going away. You do not draft a guy in the 3rd round to then follow up, in the 2nd round the year after, and then give that 2nd rounder the entire role. Like, this just doesn't happen. Van Jefferson in the 2nd, while I really like Van Jefferson, the player, in the 2nd round, it's horrible value.
They just traded Brandon Cooks from straight up. That's what happened.
And, like, Van Jefferson, while he's a good player, he had question marks about his overall athleticism. So then he comes into this pre-draft process, gets injured. We don't have numbers on him. So I think they could have got him in, like, the 3rd or 4th round. And, he's not Brandon Cooks. He does not have the top-end speed that Brandon Cooks does. Terrell Lewis in the 3rd round, I think that's right where he should have been this entire time. He brings some pass rush upside, but you still have glaring needs all over your roster. Corner, interior, inside linebacker, interior defensive line still needs some help. Like,
the entire offensive
this
line.
team
entire
sucks,
offensive
man. Can we just be
line.
honest? It doesn't matter how they drafted because the team sucks and they owe Jared Goff $10 billion, and so they're not going to win anytime soon.
Yeah, this is the big thing with your interior offensive line and having Jared Goff as your quarterback. Jared Goff, when he faces pressure, he's terrible. When he faces pressure up front, he's terrible. So your entire recipe for success moving forward should be, we need to invest in guards and centers every single year. Guards and centers, so that way we make sure that he stays clean up front and doesn't face that pressure. Because when he's clean, he's a good quarterback. What's that?
250th pick, they got a guard. Why'd they wait so
Crum
long?
out of
What were they
Clemson,
doing?
I just don't understand it. When you were choosing to address other needs above more pressing needs, it just doesn't make sense. And you're going to get a bad review from me.
Before we end this show, Yates, give us your best draft in the entire NFL.
Best draft, I think, might be Baltimore. I said
Okay.
it that I think Minnesota's up there. I loved Minnesota's draft, just from the way, and I mentioned it. We went over it, but Baltimore, I think, just walked away with some of my favorite players. James Prochet in the 6th round is ridiculous. J.K. Dobbins to be your successor to Mark Ingram, like J.K. Dobbins is going to be a stud in that offense.
I said Browns. I also had Vikings number 2. Tags, what are you going with for 1 and 2?
I mean, mine, it's tough for me. Detroit was definitely one of them. You could throw Dallas, Miami, and the Jets.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my favorites.
All right, cool. Well, that's all for today's show. Guys, thank you so much for listening. You can check us out on YouTube and watch us do the podcast as well, youtube.com/FantasyPros. For Kyle Yates and Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for watching and listening, and enjoy your football.
Thanks for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get notified when we post videos in the future.